The power went out at exactly 9:17 p.m. Armin sat alone in his small living room. The sound of rain hitting the window like soft fingers tapping glass. The TV went dark. The heater gave one last sigh and fell silent. For a few seconds, everything was still. No hum of electricity, no flicker of lights outside. Just the sound of the storm breathing through the cracks of the old house. He reached for his phone. Dead, no signal. A low whistle came from the old radio on the shelf. Armin frowned. It wasn't even plugged in. The whistle rose higher, turning sharp, then broke into short beeps like a coded message. The hairs on his arms stood up. He walked slowly toward it, eyes fixed on the dim red light glowing from its center dot. Then came a flash. Blue light filled the entire room. The walls rippled like water. The floor seemed to stretch, and a deep hum rolled through his chest. Armin stumbled back, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, he wasn't alone anymore. Two small figures stood on the couch, each no taller than 4 feet. Their skin was pale like moonlight. Their eyes were wide, golden, and glowing faintly in the dark. Both had soft fur on their ears, shaped like those of a cat, and long tails that flicked with tension. They hissed at each other, low and sharp, like two wild animals ready to strike. Armin couldn't move. His mind froze between disbelief and fear. The taller one, silver-haired, eyes cold, pointed a small metal device at the other. It hummed like a swarm of bees. The other, with black hair and softer eyes, stepped in front of him as if to protect him. Armin stumbled against the table. What is this?" His voice trembled. Neither answered. The silver-haired one growled something in a strange tongue, short, clipped sounds that didn't belong to any language he knew. The black-haired one responded in the same language, her tone fierce and fast. Then both turned to look at him. Armin's heart pounded. "I don't understand," he said again. The silver-haired one suddenly leapt forward, landing just inches from him. Her golden eyes locked on his. She tilted her head as if studying him. Then, in a voice soft but clear, she said, "The lap. It is here." Armin blinked. "What?" Before he could react, the black-haired one pushed the other aside and climbed onto the couch. She pointed to his lap and hissed. The silver-haired one hissed back, jumped beside her, and the two began fighting, kicking, scratching, their tails whipping like ropes. The absurdity struck him to tiny. Cat-tiered beings fighting over his lap in the middle of a blackout. But fear kept him frozen. Their claws sparked against each other, sparks, real ones. Tiny bursts of blue fire lit the dark room. The radio on the shelf exploded with static. "Armin," a voice whispered through it his own name. He turned sharply. The radio's red light turned white, then began to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. The two creatures stopped fighting at once. Both turned toward the radio. The silver-haired one spoke quickly, words tumbling out like warnings. The black-haired one looked at Armin with wide, frightened eyes. "Touch," she said suddenly, pointing at him, then at herself. "Touch me." Armin hesitated. The hum from the radio grew louder, like thunder trapped in a box. His skin prickled. He reached out a shaking hand. The moment his fingers brushed hers, the room exploded with light again. Everything turned white, then blue, then silent. When the light faded, the clock on the wall had stopped. The hands were frozen at 9:17. The two beings were gone. The radio was dead again. No light, no sound. Armin stood in the quiet, breathing fast, heart racing like he'd run a mile. He looked around, half expecting them to appear again. But the couch was empty. The air smelled faintly of metal and rain. He rubbed his wrist. The skin there burned slightly. When he looked down, he saw a faint silver mark to curved lines, like crescent claws, glowing softly before fading into his skin. Was that real? He whispered. His voice sounded small in the empty room. He sat down slowly, hands trembling, eyes on the dark window. The storm had stopped. The night outside was to still, to calm. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, a soft thump echoed like footsteps. Armin froze. "Hello," he called out, but his voice barely carried. He stood and looked toward the hallway. The shadows seemed thicker there, darker than they should be. He took one slow step forward. Another thump answered. Closer this time. The radio flickered on. Just for a second, a whisper came through. "Keep it safe. It said in a voice that was neither human nor alien, something between. Then silence. Armin turned the knob, but the radio was dead again. He unplugged it, heart hammering. He looked down at the couch. Two small indents remained. On the cushion, side by side, as if someone or something had been sitting there just moments ago. Lightning flashed outside, and for a brief instant, he saw two small shapes reflected in the window. They were watching him from the dark, their eyes glowing gold. The thunder came a heartbeat later. Armin stumbled back, and when he looked again, the window was empty. Just the rain starting once more. But the mark on his wrist still glowed faintly in the dark, pulsing like a quiet heartbeat. That did not belong to him. And somewhere deep inside the radio, something whispered his name again. Armin, *morning. Light crept slowly into the room, brushing the floor in soft gold. Armin opened his eyes to the steady tick of the wall clock. For a moment, he thought everything had been a dream, the flash, the creatures, the whisper of his name. But then he saw it. The mark was still there. Two thin silver lines curved across his wrist like claw marks made of light. He rubbed them hard, even washed them with cold water, but they didn't fade. The more he touched them, the warmer they grew, until he had to stop. His living room looked normal again, but it didn't feel normal. The air was too still, the silence too deep. On the couch, he saw strands of soft, pale hair, short, almost weightless, glowing faintly when the sunlight touched them. His heart pounded. He looked at the radio. It sat quietly on the shelf, black and harmless. The plug still lay on the floor, disconnected. But beside it, half hidden under a book, was something small and metallic, a shard. No bigger than a coin, smooth and curved like a piece of broken jewelry. When he picked it up, it vibrated softly, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. A chill ran down his spine. He slipped the shard into his pocket, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside. The world felt sharper somehow. The air smelled stronger, the wind seemed louder, and even the birds' cries felt closer. As he walked toward his gate, his neighbor's dog, a big German shepherd named Rusty, sprinted up to the fence, barking wildly. "Easy, boy," Armin said, raising a hand. The moment he did, the dog stopped, its ears flattened. Then, strangely, it lowered its head and whimpered, as if bowing. Armin blinked. Rusty had never done that before. He hurried down the street, trying to shake off the unease. People were out and about, someone jogging, a couple arguing near a parked car, an old man sweeping his porch. Everything seemed ordinary. Yet Armin couldn't shake the feeling that something invisible was watching him. At the corner cafe, he bought a coffee. The barista glanced at his wrist while handing him change. "Cool tattoo," she said with a faint smile. "It's not." He stopped mid-sentence. There was no point explaining. When he sat down at a table, the TV above the counter caught his attention. The news reporter looked tense. "Scientists report unusual magnetic activity last night," she said. "Short blackouts across the region. Strange blue lights seen in the northern sky." Armin froze. Blue lights. He turned up the volume, but the sound suddenly cut out. The screen flickered, and for a split second, a new image flashed, a pair of golden eyes staring directly at the camera. Then the broadcast returned to normal. No one else in the cafe reacted. Only Armin sat frozen, staring at the screen. He left the cafe fast, heart pounding. On his way home, the mark on his wrist began to throb. With each step, the sensation grew stronger, as if it were calling him somewhere. By the time he reached his house, the pain was sharp enough to make him wince. Inside, the radio was humming again. He stared at it. The plug was still on the floor. He hadn't touched it. Yet a faint white light pulsed in the center of the dial, slow, steady, in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Armin." The voice was soft, but it came from inside the room, not the radio. He spun around. No one was there. He backed away slowly until his leg hit the couch. Then he heard it again, clearer now, like a whisper from behind his ear. "You have the lap." His hands shook. "Who's there? Keep it safe." He looked toward the kitchen doorway. The light above the sink flickered. Shadows moved across the tiles like waves. The air grew cold, and the smell of rain returned, metallic and clean, the same as last night. Something was coming. A soft tap echoed from the window. Armin turned slowly. Two faint shapes stood outside in the morning fog, small, still, watching. For a moment, their glowing eyes met his. Then, just as quickly, they vanished. He ran outside, searching the yard, the street, the garden. Nothing, only footprints in the wet soil, tiny, delicate, shaped like small paws. He followed them to the edge of the fence, where they simply stopped, as if the owners had disappeared into thin air. When he came back inside, the house felt heavier. The mark on his wrist had stopped glowing, but his pulse still raced. He sat on the couch and stared at the radio again. The shard in his pocket began to vibrate. Slowly, he placed it near the radio. The light on the dial flared. The radio turned on by itself. Static filled the air. Then a voice spoke, soft and rhythmic. It wasn't English, not exactly, but somehow he understood it. "The gate opens," it said. "The lap must remain calm. Do not fear, the lap." He whispered, "What does that mean?" No answer. The radio hissed louder. Then, as if pulled by an unseen force, Armin's hand lifted toward the mark on his wrist. The silver lines glowed bright again. He felt warmth spreading up his arm, through his chest, into his head. For a few seconds, he saw flashes to figures arguing in a tunnel, a blue portal swirling behind them, a mountain breaking open like glass. Then it was gone. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. The radio went silent once more. When he looked up, he noticed something written on the fogged window glass, 5 small words drawn by a finger. "We are not enemies." Armin, his heart stopped. He stumbled to the window, wiped it with his hand, but the message didn't fade. It was written inside the glass, glowing faintly with the same silver hue as his wrist. The world outside looked normal: cars passing, children walking to school, but deep down, he knew nothing was normal anymore. He turned toward the couch again. Two faint impressions were back on the cushion, right where they'd been the night before. And from the kitchen doorway came a soft whisper, almost gentle, almost human. "We will come when the signal returns." Armin stood frozen, staring into the empty space where the voice had come from. The mark on his wrist pulsed once more, in quiet rhythm, with the radio's silent heartbeat. Outside, the wind rose again, and somewhere above the clouds, something was watching, waiting for the next signal to call them home. 3 nights passed, and Armin hadn't slept properly once. Every time he closed his eyes, the same dream returned: blue light flooding his house, 2 small cat-eared figures fighting for his lap, and the whisper of a voice saying, "Keep it safe." He began to notice things. The mark on his wrist glowed faintly at odd hours, especially near metal objects. Streetlights flickered when he walked past. His phone battery drained the moment he picked it up, and the radio, still unplugged, sometimes gave a soft sigh, like it was breathing. By the 4th day, the town had started to talk. It began with the sky. Late in the evening, a strange hum drifted over the valley, a low vibration that rattled windows, but had no clear source. People stepped out onto their porches, staring north where the mountains met the clouds. There, a pale blue shimmer pulsed in the distance, faint but visible even through the mist. At first, folks thought it was some new weather phenomenon. But when the power flickered for the 5th time that week, whispers started about secret tests, satellites, maybe even ghosts. Armin kept quiet. He didn't dare mention what he had seen, but he couldn't ignore that the shimmer came from the same direction. The radio seemed to call. That night, he sat in his dark living room with a flashlight and the broken metal shard in front of him. The mark on his wrist glowed stronger now, as if reacting to the shard. He lifted it toward the radio, half expecting nothing. The radio turned itself on. Static filled the air again, but beneath it came voices, many this time, layered and distant, like hundreds of whispers, all speaking through water. Then, clear and sharp, 2 voices broke through. The first was calm, almost cold. "You have opened the echo field." The second was softer, urgent. "He doesn't understand yet." Armin's breath caught. "Who are you?" The static roared, and light spilled out of the speaker. 2 small shadows formed on the wall beside him, long tails, sharp ears, familiar outlines. He turned fast, and there they were. The cat girls had returned. They stood side by side now, no longer fighting. Their eyes glowed faintly gold and silver. The black-haired one looked calmer this time, though tension still stiffened her tail. The silver-haired one spoke first. "The hum grows," she said simply. Armin stared, speechless. The black-haired one stepped closer, her voice softer. "Do you feel it? The pull beneath the ground?" He nodded slowly. "The town. Everyone hears it now." "Yes," she said. "It listens. The gate listens." He frowned. "Gate? What gate?" The silver one raised her hand, and a shimmer rippled through the air between them, a glowing image, faint as mist. It showed a tunnel beneath the mountains, dark and deep, with symbols carved along its walls. "Your people opened it," she said, "long ago, before they knew what it was." A door between breaths. Armin tried to understand. "Between breaths. Between worlds," she corrected. "Between what is seen and what is still becoming." His heart pounded. "And the lap. You said something about that before." The black-haired one smiled faintly. "The lap is calm. It is the center that closes the gate when fear grows too loud." He blinked. "You mean me?" Both of them nodded at once. Before he could speak again, the window rattled hard. A bright red beam shot across the street and swept over his house. The silver one hissed and pulled him back. "What is that?" He whispered. "They found us," she said. "Hide your light." She touched his wrist, and the glowing mark dimmed instantly. The black-haired one peeked through the curtain. Outside, a drone hovered in the air, sleek, metallic, humming with the same strange pitch as the radio. Its sensors glowed blue. "It's searching for resonance," the silver one murmured. "For what?" "For you," Armin's breath hitched. "But why?" Before they could answer, a knock thundered on the front door. 3 sharp raps. Then silence. The black-haired one pressed a finger to her lips. The radio hissed again, and the shard on the table vibrated so hard it began to hum on its own. The silver-haired one grabbed it quickly, wrapping it in a piece of fabric. "We must go," she said. "If they take this, the gate will open fully." "Wait," Armin said, standing. "You can't just. Who are they?" The knock came again, harder this time. Then a human voice called from outside. "Mr. Armin, we need to talk. We're from the observatory." The silver one's eyes narrowed. "Lies." The black-haired one pulled his hand. "Please, trust us. Don't open the door." Armin's mind raced. His instinct screamed to run, but his curiosity held him still. He peeked through the peephole. Outside stood 2 people in gray coats, with the word research printed on the sleeve. One held a metal briefcase that pulsed faintly with blue light. They looked human, but something in their stillness felt wrong. Too perfect, too precise. He turned back, but the room was empty. The 2 cat girls were gone. Only the radio remained, whispering one line over and over, "Do not let them listen." The knock came a 3rd time, louder. The handle shook. Armin's heart pounded so loud he thought the whole street could hear it. He backed away slowly, clutching the shard under his coat. The mark on his wrist began to glow again, brighter this time, even through the fabric. The voice outside grew colder. "Mr. Armin, we can help you control it. Just open the door." He didn't move. Then the lights in his house exploded all at once, showering the floor with glass. The drone outside screamed and crashed into the street. Smoke filled the air, and in the center of the chaos, the radio's dial flared bright white and whispered one final word before going silent. "Run." Armin grabbed his coat and bolted out the back door into the rain, clutching the glowing shard tight. Behind him, the house buzzed with energy. From somewhere high above, another red beam sliced through the clouds, searching. As he ran toward the woods, one thought pulsed through his mind with every step. If the town had started listening, what else was now awake? Asterisk rain had soaked the valley for 2 days straight. Armin had been hiding in an old shed on the outskirts of town, the one that smelled of rust and pine oil. The mark on his wrist still glowed faintly beneath his sleeve, pulsing like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Every time thunder rolled, the light flared brighter, as if answering something deep underground. He hadn't seen the cat girls since the night of the drone. He didn't know if they were alive or had vanished back to wherever they came from. But their last words haunted him. Do not let them listen. He couldn't stay hidden forever. Food was running low. His phone still refused to connect, and the hum from the mountains had grown stronger. At night, the sky above the ridge shimmered faintly blue, same as the light from his mark, same as the shard in his pocket. On the morning of the third day, he made a decision. He would go to the source. The northern hills were quiet as he climbed, boots sinking in the wet earth. Mist coiled through the trees. Every few steps, his wrist burned hotter. It wasn't just guiding him, it was calling him. Halfway up the slope, the ground shuddered. Birds screamed out of the forest. Then, from behind a cluster of pines, came a faint light, round and steady like a lantern. Armin followed it, heart thudding, until he reached a rocky opening in old mine entrance, sealed decades ago after a collapse. The boards across it were cracked and blackened. Someone or something had broken through recently. As he stood there, breath shallow, a familiar voice spoke from behind him. You came. He turned fast. The black-haired cat girl stepped out from the mist, her fur damp with rain. Her golden eyes glowed softly. I knew you would feel the pull, she said. Before he could reply, another voice joined, sharp and cold. He shouldn't be here. The silver-haired one emerged, carrying a small pack. She looked wary, her tail twitching. The gate is unstable. It should not be touched. I don't care about gates, Armin said. I just want the truth. Why me? Why this mark? The silver one gave a thin smile. Because your calm saved us. The black-haired one stepped closer. You are what our worlds lost, a center that listens without fear. When the signal reached Earth, it found you. Armin frowned. Signal. The silver one nodded toward the mine. It came from here. Your people opened the gate once. They didn't know it was alive. Lightning flashed far above, lighting the cave mouth. For a moment, Armin thought he saw movement inside, shapes swirling. Almost human, almost smoke. What's in there? He asked quietly. The black-haired one's ears folded back. A wound between worlds. A rift that leaks thought and light. It was sealed by those before us, but someone on your side wants to open it again. He remembered the people in gray coats, the drone, the voice at his door. The ones who said they were scientists. They are, said the silver one. But they seek to use the gate's energy. They believe it can power your world. They don't see what it feeds on. What does it feed on? Both looked at him in silence. Then the black-haired one whispered, fear. Armin shivered. Fear, she nodded. Every world carries it, but yours sings with it. The more fear your people release, the wider the gate opens. You felt it that night. The hum, the shaking, the silence. It was feeding. He looked toward the dark tunnel. The air pulsed faintly, breathing in and out like a sleeping creature. Suddenly, voices echoed from below, human voices. Flashlights flickered deep in the mine. They are here, hissed the silver one. Armin's pulse raced. We need to hide. The cat girls pulled him behind a boulder. Moments later, 3 figures in gray coats stepped into view, their boots crunching on wet gravel. One of them held a metal case, the same one he'd seen outside his door. The man at the front turned on a small device, and a wave of blue light spread across the cave walls. Resonance confirmed, the man said. The subject's frequency is close. Armin felt his wrist burn. He clutched it, biting his lip to keep from gasping. The light from under his sleeve glowed through the fabric. They can sense it, the black-haired one whispered. The silver-haired one pulled something from her pack, a crystal sphere glowing faintly green. If they reach the core, the gate will open again. You must stay calm, Armin. Your calm seals it. How? By trust, she said simply. The field listens to your heart, not your mind. The men were getting closer. The air hummed with energy, static crawling along the cave walls. One of them looked around sharply. Did you hear that? The black-haired one pressed her hands together, and the air shimmered like heat over sand. For a second, the 3 of them vanished from sight as the men walked past, unaware. Armin held his breath. When the footsteps faded, he looked down the tunnel. Blue light pulsed deeper within, like the heart of a machine. What happens if they open it? He asked softly. The silver-haired one met his eyes. Your sky will fold. Time will stutter, and both our worlds will drown in sound. He swallowed hard. Then we stopped them. The black-haired one smiled faintly. You are brave for a human. They slipped into the tunnel after the men, careful and silent. The deeper they went, the stronger the humming grew. Symbols glowed faintly on the wall's spirals, claws, and circles that seemed to shift when he looked at them. To long dot at the tunnel's end. A huge stone door stood open, just a crack. Beyond it glimmered the same blue light he'd seen that first night. The men were there, setting up their equipment, voices low and urgent. Armin felt his mark throb like fire. The cat girls looked at him, waiting. He took a breath and stepped forward. "Hey!" The men spun around. Their leader froze. "How did you?" Armin didn't let him finish. He raised his wrist. The mark blazed white, and the hum in the air twisted into a scream. The ground trembled. The equipment sparked. One of the cat girls grabbed his arm, shouting something he couldn't hear. The light exploded outward, swallowing them all in blue fire. For a moment, Armin felt himself falling not down, but sideways. Through sound and wind and memory. Then everything went black, and in that endless dark, a familiar voice whispered close to his ear, soft, human and impossibly calm. "Welcome home." Armin, *. When Armin opened his eyes, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The tunnel was gone. The sound of the hum, the cold wet air, the blue fire all vanished. He was lying on a metal floor, surrounded by soft white light. His head throbbed. He sat up slowly, blinking. The room looked like a laboratory, walls curved and silver, filled with machines that breathed in slow rhythm. He wasn't alone. Standing across from him was a woman in a gray coat, her blonde hair tied neatly, eyes sharp behind small glasses. She was older, maybe in her 40s, but there was a calm strength about her. On her coat was a patch that read Dr. Mira Sandin, Resonance Division. "Welcome back, Armin," she said, smiling slightly. "You're safe," he blinked. "Safe? Where am I?" "In the research station under Mount Grelin," she said. "We found you unconscious near the collapse zone. You're lucky to be alive." Armin tried to stand, but his wrist ached. The silver mark was still glowing faintly. Mira's gaze dropped to it. For a second, something cold flickered in her eyes before she smiled again. "That's quite an interesting pattern," she said softly. "We've been studying the same frequency for years. You seem connected." "I don't know what happened," Armin lied. "There was a cave-in. I blacked out." She tilted her head. "You remember more than you think. The field around you is still active." Armin's pulse quickened. "Field." Mira turned toward a glass wall behind her. Through it, Armin could see a massive chamber filled with swirling blue mist. In its center floated a huge sphere of light, pulsing gently, like a heartbeat. "That," she said quietly, "is the gate. What your visitors call the Wound." Armin stepped closer. You opened it." "Not yet," she said. "We've only stabilized it. But with your help, we can control it. Power it safely." His stomach dropped. "You're the ones who sent the drones." Mira didn't deny it. "We had to locate the resonance carrier U. Without you, the gate collapses violently. With you, it can stay balanced, harmless, and provide energy enough for the entire region. No more blackouts. No more suffering." Armin's mind spun. "You can't use it like that. They told me it feeds on fear." Her lips curved faintly. "Superstition. They want to keep it for themselves. You've seen them. They manipulate emotion. They twist truth." Armin's chest tightened. "You mean the cat girls?" Mira chuckled softly. "If that's what you call them, yes. They're not guardians, they're extractors. They drain stability from whatever world they enter. Their harmony is a mask. You're just a battery to them." He shook his head. "No, they saved me, did they?" She asked quietly. "Or did they brand you? Look at your wrist, Armin. That mark isn't a gift, it's a tether. You're their anchor, their way in." He stared at the silver lines, suddenly uncertain. The mark pulsed as if reacting to her words. Mira stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're not their servant. You can choose differently. Help us contain the energy, and you'll free yourself and them from the cycle." She pressed a button, and a panel opened beside the glass wall. Inside it sat a small device shaped like a ring of metal, humming faintly with the same tone as his mark. "This will link to your frequency," she said. "It will let you guide the gate safely. You'll be a hero." Armin hesitated. "And if I refuse?" Her smile faded. "Then someone else will do it, someone less stable. And the gate will break." The air in the room seemed to shift then, heavy and electric. A faint whisper filled the air, soft, familiar. "Don't listen." Armin turned sharply. The voice came from the corner of the room behind the machines. He took a slow step toward it, pretending to examine the equipment. Then he saw a flicker of movement, a tail, a glint of golden eyes. The black-haired cat girl was crouched in the shadows, hiding. Her lips moved silently. "She lies." Mira noticed his distraction. "Something wrong?" He forced a smile. "No, just dizzy." "Understandable," she said. "You've been through a lot." She handed him the device. It was warm to Warm Man the moment he touched it. The mark on his wrist flared bright white. The gate beyond the glass wall began to pulse faster. The entire room trembled slightly. Mira's eyes shone. Yes, that's it. It responds to you." The black-haired girl stepped forward from the shadows, whispering urgently. "Armin, stop. It's feeding. She's using you." He froze between them, his mind splitting into directions. Mira reached for him, calm but firm. "Don't let superstition steal your purpose. You can help the world." The cat girl's voice trembled. "You'll destroy both worlds." The light from his wrist grew blinding. He dropped the device, gasping. Sparks flew from the machines. Mira shouted orders into a headset, but her voice was lost under the rising hum. The gate flared bright, expanding like a living thing. Armin fell to his knees, clutching his wrist. The mark burned as if alive. The cat girl darted forward, grabbing his shoulders. "Listen to your breath," she cried. "You are the lap. Calm seals it." Mira yelled, "No, don't listen to her." The hum became a scream. Alarms blared. Glass shattered. The gate's light swallowed the chamber in waves of blue fire. Mira reached toward the control panel, shouting, but her voice faded in the roar. Armin squeezed his eyes shut and focused on the one thing he could control: his breath, in, out. Slow, steady. The light around him began to pulse with his rhythm. The screaming hum softened, then steadied. The cat girl's trembling hand found his, and together, they stayed still while the storm of light folded inward. When the noise finally stopped, half the lab was gone. The gate's glow had dimmed to a quiet shimmer. Mira lay on the floor, coughing, her glasses cracked. She looked up at him, not angry, but broken. "You could have changed everything," she whispered. Armin stood shakily, still holding the cat girl's hand. "Maybe I did," he said softly. "Just not the way you wanted." He looked through the cracked glass at the fading blue light and knew one thing for sure: this wasn't the end. The gate had only closed its eyes, not gone to sleep. And someone, somewhere, would try to wake it again. The world didn't end that night, at least. Not in the way Armin expected. Hours after the explosion inside the mountain lab, the valley was silent again. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Armin and the black-haired cat girl stumbled through the forest, leaving the smoking ruins behind. Each step crunched over wet leaves and shattered glass from the drones that had fallen like dead insects from the sky. Neither of them spoke. The air buzzed faintly, a leftover hum from the gate, low and restless, like thunder trapped in the earth. Finally, the cat girl stopped and turned to him. Her golden eyes shimmered under the faint starlight. "You calmed it," she said quietly. "You stopped the scream." Armin leaned against a tree, still trembling. "I didn't stop anything. It's just waiting." She nodded once. "Yes, the wound sleeps, not heals." He looked up at the dark sky. Strange shapes shimmered above the clouds, ripples of light that twisted and bent, like reflections on water. "It's changing the sky," he whispered. She looked too, ears twitching. "It's looking for balance between your world and mine." The gate is half open now. It listens for fear, but also for hope. Her words lingered in the cold air. Armin couldn't help but think of Mira, the scientist. He had left her behind in the ruins, unsure if she lived or died. Her last words still echoed in his head. "You could have changed everything." He didn't know if she had been wrong. Maybe she had only seen a different way to save the same broken world. A sudden rustle behind them made both turn sharply. The silver-haired cat girl stepped from the shadows. Her eyes were tired, her fur streaked with dust, but her voice was steady. "The gate is awake again. It knows you now. It calls your breath." Armin's pulse quickened. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, glancing upward, "that tonight the sky bends low to listen." And as she spoke, the forest began to hum. It started deep beneath their feet, a vibration that rose through the soil and into their bones. The air shimmered faintly, bending light in ripples. High above, The stars flickered like trembling candles. The silver one pointed toward the mountains. There, the heart opens. Armin followed her gaze. A column of blue light was rising from the ridge, twisting into the sky like a spiral. The clouds above it bent inward, forming a vast bowl of light that seemed to fold the heavens themselves. What's happening? He shouted over the growing sound. The gate is choosing. The black-haired one cried. It must close or consume. He staggered backward, shielding his eyes. How do I stop it? The silver one reached for his wrist, gripping the glowing mark. You don't stop it, you balance it. You must come both sides. Her touch burned cold. The mark flared white. Visions crashed through his mind to worlds overlapping, one of metal and rain, one of endless dusk. He saw Mira standing at the edge of the gate, tears streaking her face, holding a child in her arms. A memory, a vision? He couldn't tell. Then came her voice, faint but clear. Armin. I only wanted light. He gasped and fell to his knees. She's alive. The black-haired girl shook her head. A piece of her. The gate holds fragments. She is trapped inside. Armin stared at the blue column. Then I have to save her. The silver one frowned. If you go near it again, it will take you both. The gate doesn't give it trades. He looked between them, his breath ragged. I don't care. I can't let her be lost. The black-haired one's voice softened. Then we go with you. Together, they ran toward the mountain. The forest behind them bent and shimmered as if the world were melting. Every tree leaned toward the light. The hum grew so loud it felt like the earth was singing in pain. At the ridge, the sight stopped Armin cold. The gate was no longer a sphere. It had become a living storm, rings of blue and gold spiraling upward, pulling wind and dust and lightning into its heart. And there, at its edge, stood Mira, her hair whipped around her face, her eyes wild with wonder and sorrow. She clutched a small silver device against her chest. Mira. Armin shouted. She turned. Her expression softened. You came. What are you doing? He cried. You'll die. Her smile was sad. If I close it now, I lose her again. The gate has her voice. My daughter's voice. I can hear her. Armin stepped forward, the cat girls holding him back. Mira, that's not her, it's the gate talking. It uses what we love. She shook her head. You don't understand. It doesn't lie. It reflects. It shows what still lives inside us. You heard it too, didn't you? He froze. The whispers, the visions they had felt personal, intimate. Was the gate alive, or was it only echoing what they feared and desired most? Mira extended her free hand toward him. Help me, Armin. We can shape it together. Two minds, two hearts. Balance, the silver-haired girl hissed. She will drown you. The black-haired one gripped his arm. Trust your calm, not her sorrow. The sky above them folded lower, clouds warping like liquid glass. Lightning crawled sideways. The entire mountain trembled. Armin looked from Mira to the two beings beside him. Both sides wanted the same thing in different ways: balance, peace, but both demanded a sacrifice. He stepped forward. Then I'll trust all of you. He reached for Mira with one hand and the cat girls with the other. The moment their hands met, a blinding surge of light roared through the world. The wind stopped. The mountain went silent. The stars froze in place. For one endless second, time itself held its breath. Then the light folded inward, soft as a heartbeat. When Armin opened his eyes, the gate was gone. The storm was gone. Mira was gone. Only a faint glow lingered over the valley like morning mist. The black-haired cat girl knelt beside him, her eyes wet. You did it, she whispered. You balanced both sides. He looked down at his wrist. The mark was fading now, silver turning to faint white. Above them, the sky slowly unfolded again, calm and clean. But Armin knew this wasn't an ending. Somewhere in that light, something had changed forever. The gate was gone, but the silence it left behind was listening, and deep inside that silence, a heartbeat still answered his own. Asterisk. The world felt new, as if someone had quietly rewritten it overnight. When Armin woke, he wasn't sure where he was at first. The smell of wet grass filled the air. He was lying on a field under a pale sunrise, the horizon glowing soft orange. For a long moment, he didn't move. He listened to the wind brushing through tall grass, to distant birds, to the quiet rhythm of his own breath. There was no hum anymore. No blue light, no trembling in the air. Just peace. He sat up slowly, his body sore, his clothes torn and dirty. His wrist caught the light. The mark that had once burned like fire was now faint and white, no brighter than an old scar. But it still pulsed softly alive. Somehow the valley below him looked the same, yet different. The mountain where the gate had been was calm now, its peak covered with mist. The trees that had bent toward the sky were straight again. The air smelled fresh, sharp, clean. He stood, wincing, and turned in a slow circle. For a moment, he thought he was alone. Then he saw them. The Decat girls sat side by side on a fallen log, quiet and still. Their fur shimmered faintly in the morning light. They looked peaceful, no longer tense, no longer rivals, just tired. The black-haired one smiled faintly when she saw him stand. "You're awake," she said softly. He nodded, his throat dry. "How long?" "Only a few hours," the silver-haired one said. The gate closed at dawn. He looked at the horizon. "Is it really gone?" The silver one's golden eyes narrowed slightly. "No, nothing that big ever truly disappears. It's sealed for now, resting between your breath and the stars." Armin tried to smile. "That sounds like something you'd say to a child." The black-haired one tilted her head. "Sometimes truth sounds simple when it's real." He didn't argue. The truth was, he could feel it, the quiet hum deep beneath his skin, like a memory of sound. It wasn't gone, just sleeping. He sat beside them. None of them spoke for a long time. The morning air was filled with warmth and the smell of earth after rain. It felt human again. Finally, he asked, "Mira?" The silver-haired one looked down. Her body didn't return, but her voice did. Armin frowned. Her voice. The black-haired one pointed toward the sky. "Listen." He closed his eyes. For a moment, there was only the wind. Then, faint and far, he heard it, a soft hum, low and calm, echoing like a heartbeat in the clouds. It wasn't speech exactly, but he knew it. It was Mira's tone, the same cadence she'd used when she said his name. "She's part of the balance now," the silver-haired one said. She traded herself for silence. Armin felt his chest tighten. "She wanted to save her daughter." "She did," whispered the black-haired one. "And you helped her find peace." He sat in the grass, staring at his hands. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt human, fragile, grateful. A soft touch pulled him from his thoughts. The silver-haired cat girl placed something in his palm, a small shard of metal, faintly glowing blue. "The last piece," she said. "It belongs to your world now." He turned it over carefully. It was warm, humming quietly. "What do I do with it?" "Keep it near calm," she said. "It listens to kindness. It will sleep as long as you stay gentle." He smiled at that. "Gentle, huh? Not exactly my strong suit lately." The black-haired one laughed. A sound so light it felt like sunlight itself. "Then learn. Your kind has forgotten how to rest." They both stood then. Their tails flicked softly in the breeze. "We must go," said the silver-haired one. "Our worlds have spoken. The breach is sealed and balance restored. We are needed elsewhere." Armin stood too, panic rising in his chest. "Wait, you're leaving?" The black-haired one nodded. "You won't see us again in this form." He looked from one to the other. "Then, what happens to me?" The silver-haired one's voice softened. "You live." That single word hit harder than any explosion. They turned toward the forest. Their figures shimmered in the growing light, edges glowing like glass in sunrise. Before they vanished completely, the black-haired one looked back and smiled. "Thank you for letting us fight for your lap." Armin laughed quietly, a tear sliding down his cheek. "It was the least I could do." And then they were gone. Only the wind remained, whispering softly through the grass. He stood there for a while, watching the sun climb higher. Then he started walking down the hill toward the town. Smoke rose faintly from chimneys. The world had already moved on. People would wake, eat breakfast, and talk about the strange storm last night as if it were nothing more than weather. When he reached his home, it looked untouched. The broken windows were whole again. The radio sat quietly on the shelf, black and ordinary. Yet when he passed it, a faint crackle broke the silence. "Armin," said a gentle voice. "Keep it safe." He smiled. "I will." He made tea and sat by the window. The world outside glowed soft gold. The mark on his wrist no longer burned, But sometimes when he breathed deeply, it pulsed once just enough to remind him that the connection still lived somewhere. Waiting, weeks later, people would speak of that night, the blue storm, the bent sky, the humming that made every heart race. But no one truly remembered how it ended. Only Armin did. He kept the shard by the radio, wrapped in a piece of cloth, and every evening, when the world grew quiet, he'd touch it and feel a calm warmth spread through the air like someone whispering peace into the bones of the earth. He never saw the cat girls again, but sometimes at dawn, he would wake to the sound of soft purring near the couch and the faintest indent beside him, as if two small shapes still fought gently for his lap. He never looked. He didn't need to. Some mysteries, he'd learned, aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be held.